American history. Today we're going to be talking about the Bill of Rights, what it is, and what the specific amendments in the Bill of Rights say. Here are your video goals. Make sure you answer these before you come to class tomorrow. Let's start by talking about why we have a Bill of Rights and why some people back in the late 1700s thought the United States needed one. The basic issue here was that many Americans were afraid that the new Constitution, written at the Constitutional Convention of 1787, would lead to a tyrannical government. That is, a governmental system where the government had so much power that it could oppress the rights of individuals. Some states demanded a Bill of Rights before they would join in the new constitutional system, specifically North Carolina and Rhode Island. In order to get these states on board, James Madison, who was the leader of Congress at the time, wrote 10 amendments that would limit the power of the central government over states and individuals. And he was able to get these 10 amendments added to the Constitution. And once these amendments are added to the Constitution, the last states join, and all 13 of the original colonies are now part of the new United States of America. Let's go through the different amendments that were added by the Bill of Rights and look specifically at what these amendments do to limit the power of the government set up by the Constitution. This is really important, guys, for a number of reasons. One, because it helps us to understand how the United States developed. Two, because it's important for you guys as individuals to know your rights and what the government can and cannot do to you. So, let's get started with the First Amendment. The First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. The main ideas here are that 1. Congress cannot declare an official religion or limit religious practices. 2. Congress cannot limit free speech or freedom of the press. That is, you can say basically whatever you want, and that you can publish anything that you want. So the government can't crack down on your Instagram account. And 3, the Congress may not make laws that prevent people from protesting peacefully against the government. This amendment is seen as being really important because if people aren't allowed to express their ideas, then a democracy is never really going to flourish, because if you can't express your ideas, then you can't get your ideas out there for people to vote on. All right, amendment number 2. So this amendment says that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. All right, what's the takeaway point here? Basically what it's saying is that people have a right to own weapons because the militia is necessary for public safety. Remember, the militia being the sort of voluntary military organizations that most towns and villages set up for their own protection. Now, this is an important amendment to think about because a lot of Americans view this as giving Americans the right to own guns. And I'm not a constitutional scholar. I don't know where I stand on this issue, but I have some key questions that I want you guys to think about. One is that now that militias are no longer common in the United States, does this rule still apply? It specifically says here that guns are important so that we can have militias, but now that we don't have militias, do we need to keep guns? Second, does this amendment secure Americans' rights to own any kind of weapon or only certain kinds of weapons? Think, for example, of what guns were like back in the 1700s. They were the old-fashioned muskets that you had to load and fire one shot at a time. So does this amendment protect Americans' rights to modern guns that can fire many bullets in a matter of seconds? Does it protect Americans' rights to own really powerful weapons like grenades or rocket launchers or bombs? These are important questions, and it doesn't say in the Constitution where these limits are. This is up to us as a nation to figure out for ourselves right now. That's what the Second Amendment is really all about. Bear arms. All right, Third Amendment. So the Third Amendment says that no soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. Basically, this is saying, hey, remember when the British got to sleep in your houses for free? That's not going to happen anymore, except during a war, and then it might happen. But so basically, this is looking specifically at what the British did and saying, we're not going to do that. The soldiers can't just sleep in your house for free. All right, let's look at the Fourth Amendment. So the Fourth Amendment says that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Takeaway points. The government can't just take your stuff, and they have to have a good reason, quote, probable cause, in order to get a search warrant. So they have to get a warrant, and they have to have a reason for the warrant, and then they can come into your house and look for stuff and take it. All right, the Fifth Amendment. This one's crazy because it has like 8 different rights crammed in to one big run-on sentence. So let's check it out. Actually, you know what? I don't even want to read this one. You should just read this one on your own. Let me give you the takeaway points, though. 1. It says a grand jury has to indict you before you can be put on trial for a capital crime. So an indictment, a hearing, is basically like a little mini trial that happens before the real trial, and where people get together and decide if there's enough evidence to put you on trial. This is to make sure that you don't get put on trial for something that there's really no reason to think you actually did. Second, there's no double jeopardy. That's my dog. Hey. Be quiet. All right, so he says there's no double jeopardy. What this means is that you can only be put on trial one time for any crime. So if you get put on trial for murder once and you are found innocent, you cannot be put on trial for that again, except in very special cases, but we don't have to talk about those. Third, you never have to give evidence against yourself. What this means is that they ask you in court or before court, if the police ask you, like, did you commit this crime? You do not have to say anything. You can plead the fifth. Fourth, you can never lose your rights to life, liberty, or property until you are found guilty of a crime. So the government can't take away your stuff until you're actually found guilty. And fifth, the government cannot take private property for public use, that is, like stuff like parks and roads, without paying for it. So the government has to give you a fair price if they're going to take your land and like build a road on it or something like that. So in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Takeaway points. You have the right to trial by jury in criminal cases. You have the right to have witnesses at these trials who speak in your favor, and you have the right to assistance for a lawyer, which is where our current system comes from, where if you don't have enough money to get a lawyer, you can have a lawyer provided for you for free by the state. Seventh Amendment. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall otherwise be re-examined at any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Takeaway points. Your right to trial by jury in civil cases, that is not criminal cases, but other stuff like lawsuits where you're getting sued by an individual, will happen in any trial that has to do with a significant amount of money, because $20 was a lot back then. And any decision reached through the legal process cannot be brought up again. So if somebody sues you and they lose, they can't just sue you again for the same thing. All right, the Eighth Amendment, maybe my favorite. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Takeaway points. The defendant should be able to pay bail. So if you're arrested for a crime, you can pay a certain amount of money and they will let you go as long as you promise to come back for the trial. And if you show up at the trial, you get all that money back. So this is a way of giving you some freedom while you're on trial, but making sure that you don't leave town. So bail should be a lot, but it should be something that the person can pay. So a really rich person might have to pay a lot more money in bail than a really poor person. Second, punishment should not be excessive or unreasonable. So a lot of times punishments will be left up to the judge's discretion, but you can't just, kill somebody for speeding or something like that. And that is protected by the Constitution. But there's one main question, and that is exactly what is excessive? How much of a punishment is fair, and then when does it become excessive? Is the death penalty always excessive? I don't know. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage other rights retained by the people. Translation. Just because other rights are not listed in the Bill of Rights does not mean that these rights do not exist. So there might be other rights out there that the Constitution just hasn't taken the time to talk about. All right, 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. All right, translation. So if the Constitution doesn't specifically grant a power to the Constitution, then the United States cannot do it. Vice versa. If the Constitution doesn't specifically say that a state cannot do it, then the state can do it. If neither the Constitution nor the states say that people can't do it, then people can do it. Make sense? Great. So this is basically saying that anything that the Constitution doesn't talk about, states or individuals can do. There's a brief summary of the 10 different bills contained in the Bill of Rights, the 10 different amendments contained in the Bill of Rights. So make sure you remember these. We're going to talk about these tomorrow in class. One last thing I want you to think about. What other rights should be added to the Constitution? So think about why certain rights are added and why other rights are not. This is an important question. What did the people who were writing the Bill of Rights think mattered? What did they not think about? What about the right to vote? What about equality between men and women or racial equality? These are rights that weren't added back then. Maybe think about why they weren't and if they should be included in the Bill of Rights. Here are your video goals. Make sure you answer these before you come to class tomorrow.